Blog Talk Radio.
Well, hello and welcome to Open Money on Blog Talk Radio. I'm Ernie Jacob, and Michael Linton is with me just around the corner in Courtenay on the northwest coast of Turtle Island, i.e. British Columbia. So, and it's a beautiful, hot, sunny day here. Ain't that right, Michael?
It's hot, it's sunny, it's beautiful. 3 out of 3.
Not bad. So today we were going to carry on and flesh out what we didn't get to in our last show with Alan Rosenbluth, talking about stewardship of the commons, and which goes back a long, long way to the very beginning of this journey of exploration of community currencies, open money, let systems, mutual credit, which for you started like way back in the last century, right, Michael?
Oh, not just the last century. It was the last millennium. It was so long ago I can hardly remember its origins. Well, for me it was 82, 83. We began work specifically on community currencies, the let systems and so on. But I think the whole issue of the creation and maintenance of commons had been an issue for me for many years before that. Perhaps all of us, at some stage in our childhood and our youth, we realized that you can have private property and there's common property, and the way you make the world controllable is you control your private property. You make things yours. You have your things. Because things that are common to others, well, the trouble with them is other people use them, run them down or trash them or something. So if you free bikes at the school, then pretty soon there's not free, there's 2, and then 1. They get stolen.
Yeah, the tragedy of the commons.
Exactly. The propensity for something which is good if we mind our manners to turn sour because people get urgent, greedy, unconscious, God knows what, but they don't notice what their actions do to others. Or they don't care what their actions do to others, or they do care what their actions do to others, and they're deliberately going this route because they want to be up. Get ahead, Boyle.
It's the genetic imperative at work anyway. And everybody looks after me first.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd call it so much genetic as systemic. I mean...
okay. Well, I call it genetic. You call it systemic.
Yeah. It comes with the machinery. Yeah. Like survival of me, I, myself, and the person... My family,
my tribe.
Yep.
My blood. Yep. Primarily my blood.
Yeah, it was, well, I mean, that's one of the old, I believe, where did I read this? I don't remember, but one of the old Arab proverbs, Bedouin, was translated roughly as, I and my tribe against the world. I and my band against the tribe. I and my family against the band. I and my brother against the family, right? Mm-hmm. The formation of a tribe was a division and a boundary, an either or, an in against out, a consequence of the perception of threat.
Well, and the protection thereof, right?
Yeah,
I mean, it's like the tighter your connections to your immediate family, and then you get into you get into blood feuds. Which is primarily a protective device. Well,
there's a lot of components to it. There are consequences. There are keep off my patch, don't cross this line sort of processes. Yeah. Everything's about boundaries, distinctions, not enough, control on, impose on, that sort of a space. Versus. And it's very much a versus in the sense of it's difficult to have a competitive space enclosure game going on and have commons processes operating in the same space. Notice how so many of our...
That also works in tandem. I mean, they're parallel sort of strategies going on. One is cooperative, one is competitive.
Yeah, and I heard something yesterday morning on CBC by a man who studied bee colonies, whose name I can't quite remember. He's now running a department at Simon Fraser University on social development systems of some sort. I can't quite remember what it's called. He was on the radio, there you go. And he was talking about bees being both competitive and cooperative, and how he'd seen that that's a component of society, and indeed it is. That if we were not collaborative in some senses, our competition would be untenable. We wouldn't be able to even compete. But we focus on one side without seeing the other.
In that context, the way the money works either supports cooperative, collective behavior, or it supports competitive, acquisitive behavior. And that's what we see with the federal national currencies, the normal money that we use.
Yes, as with almost all other social institutions and artifacts, the process of our sort of primary mentation is pretty much flat earth, my patch, my territory, my property, me first, and naturally enough, the monetary system which has emerged with this is a fairly perfect reflector and focuser. And so around money, the general community attitude is my money first, me first, whatever, because that's how it's set up. Now, when you're seeking to change...
The least.
Yeah. And if you're seeking to change that, as we are in the open money world, we're saying it's not incompatible to have competition and true commons collaboration going on simultaneously. Not at all incompatible. But there has to be a bit of attention shifting, because people are only aware of competition, don't believe in collaboration, don't even believe that it's there in many cases, don't see that how much it invades, pervades, and supports everything we do, and therefore cannot appreciate the value of having that as an overt component of our economy.
Well, we start off by looking at a limited pot, no matter what it is that we're doing. We're looking at a limited pot, and we don't know whether it's going to fill up again.
Yeah, and well, that's just as the personal condition is the bucket that leaks between the supply and the demand, so the organizational entities that come together to do open money development are faced with the same issue. You are a bucket, a composite community of receivers who are compositely negotiating the effectiveness of your work to produce true open money systems in your community. And that is a negotiating task, and it requires that the people who do open money development operate in the commons, explicitly, clearly, intentionally, willingly. I mean, we don't want people reluctantly saying, oh, I don't know if this will work, but I'll give it a try. I think we want people saying, damn, this looks like a hot one. Let's create our own monetary worlds, our own monetary systems, our own monetary economies, our own social nets, our own tribes, our own world. Let's go, baby. And I'm going to do this, and I understand it enough to believe that my effort is not futile and stupid, and that with a modicum of intelligence, there's a wildfire here. There's a wave front. There's an energy generation. We're drilling for the virtual oil of virtual money. And once we get the breakthrough, well, it's going to be wildcats out of the bag, if you like. There's going to be a lot of development all over the damn place from people who get some of the idea and maybe not enough of it. Maybe they don't understand.
Well, I think that's the difficulty that's been there right from the very beginning of system development for you and others. I mean, that wavefront hasn't come. So why do the just do the singular, organizationally owned community currency?
Well, yeah, I think that this is the thing. Well, we've been alive to that since '83. Our first construction of the administration of a LET system made it absolutely clear that the LET system was a service and that it was not owned, it was not toll boothed, and that it retained an open edge, both in its service provision, that is, anybody can join, and it's their money and their world. We provide the world facility, the LET system at that time, and pretty soon after that, the multiple LET systems of our valley. But they weren't owned or controlled, and they couldn't run a charge on it, because all those, for all their immediate logical reference, people understand those things. People have seen them before. Oh yes, we're going to do some good works in the community. Let's form a society. Let's coordinate. Let's form bylaws. Let's make this our brand or our territory or something, and let's be the channel.
Let's go get a grant.
Yeah, whatever. Whatever's necessary to keep the bucket of cash flow, which is the biggest damn problem we're dealing with. Now, here we are talking about creating buckets of virtual flow. I mean, the basis for open money development is that open money works. If you don't understand that, then don't go there, please. If you understand that open money works, you understand that it operates in the space of community and commons, not in the space of control, toll booth, enclose, restrict, or singularity. And if you understand that, then everything's in at least good shape for proceeding in a collaborative way. However, if you're worried that your bucket is going to empty unless you're in control and in charge and you have your bases covered, then you will be prone to survival instinct behavior. You will try and do what any fish would do out of water, which is swim harder, and, don't go in the air, baby. You've got to stop being a fish, and you've got to be a bird. You've got to be in the medium of this, which means
But being a fish, I'm here in North Bend, Saskatchewan, and I want to start one of these things, and my bucket is empty, and there are a couple of my friends who want to start one of these things, and we need money to start one of these things. We want a community currency. Community currencies. We want a number of. We're on to more than just a singular currency. Okay, so we're going to have a bunch of them eventually.
We're talking about. You got to start with something. You want to have something that works and meets the cash flow needs of being available. Anybody who's going to be active in open money development needs to be able to devote clear time and attention to getting that job done, which means they've got to have the rent paid, the mortgage covered, or whatever it is their game. If that isn't covered by their activities in the open money development, then, they're in jeopardy and at risk or loss, and maybe they cannot carry those risks and losses without, maybe they just can't carry them, so they don't get to play. So basically, you have to have a development model if you need cash flow that produces cash flow. But there's no need for that development model to be enclosed and territorialized and turned inwards to another walled garden. So there are understandings there that have to be, I think, fully appreciated. Otherwise, you're not moving into the medium and into the use of that medium. I mean, fundamentally, the statement
but let me play the devil's advocate here, because so I'm in North Bend, and while I agree with you, I think that's going to take a while, and in the meantime, we need to start with something, and the usual thing to start with is a committee, an organization, a board, and a grant. And I know these people, this wonderful foundation here that will fund us to start one of these things. Why not?
Mm-hmm. No problem with having a grant. No problem with an agency being formed that says we are willing to support open money development through the channeling of the grant through our recipient. Therefore, there is this institution the grant aiders can provide money to. This money will be made available for instance, the financial operation of the Open Money Development Collaborative. There you go. That would be a structure that would work. So locally in your place, you form such a society, it receives the money, that money is available in that context. Now, the route through which you can recompense your activities from the open money world is restricted to stuff that meets the Let System Trust requirements. That is, you're not getting in the way, you're not toll boothing in any form at all, and that the revenue you generate is available in open space rather than in closed requirement. I mean, if you're creating a business in dog food manufacturing, of course your revenue is yours. But if you're creating a business of the commons of money, whatever revenue you generate is put back into the commons. It's not controlled. So it has to go to an entity that reflects the people whose responsibility that commons are. That is the active collective of developers. Ding.
Okay, so I've got a half a dozen. So I've got a half a dozen people in my city who are prepared to do this. So, and in fact, we already have an organization. So we'll just run this thing through our organization. Basically, right. What you're saying is that the money that's generated from, we're talking specifically about a community way project here, where businesses donate, right? And so there's a registration fee. It goes into a common pot. And how do I get money from that common pot for my expenses and my time?
Well, the principal thing is you apply to the common pot as one of the common pot users, and you perhaps receive settlement that month of 3,000 community way dollars on your regional network, your BEN network or something, as your personal revenue payment for your contracted and invoice services to the open money development. So you get paid in community money. Some of that you might be able to use quite effectively. However, a pile of it, and I'm not going to question how much of that pile, could be converted into cash if there's anybody around who's willing to recognize the value of these dollars that have been created in the community for the benefit of the community and are available to circulate in the community, i.e. we need changers. If there are changers around, you're in good shape.
Well, actually, I've got a family who, there's a whole bunch of them, and they have regular jobs with cash flow. They could buy some of that community money from me.
Well, they could.
What I earn.
Yeah, indeed they could. That's always a very valuable process, is that there shall be changers. People who can divert a cash transaction to make it into the cash goes to good works, and local money begins to take more role in circulating locally. So a changer is a wonderful thing. The changer, of course, needs that there are places that they can realize dollar value for the dollar in their hand or in their community currency money. So you've got to have some serious businesses that have turnover in, say, retail groceries or restaurant activity or transport services or something, so that people are directly and immediately willing to say, yep, I'll I'll flip some of your dollars because I can spend them on my phone bill or my groceries or my restaurants or whatever. Then changing's easy. What you want before changing is you want fronters. You want fronters and backers. People who
well, actually, before we get too deep into the fronting and the backing, let me just catch up a little bit, because just in case there's somebody listening to this and is totally lost and wants to know what the hell we're talking about.
Then they should speak up.
Well, they should speak up, certainly. But also, just so that they can Google Community Way, they can Google Open Money. There's lots of stuff up on the web. And what we're talking about specifically is how to use the community currencies that are created to fund development, and how that creates commonwealth, and why it's very important for this to be open, free, unfettered part of the commons.
And sort of the main reason is for the reality of the optics, if I may put it that way. If you're telling people, come on in, the water's warm, come try this, it's great, then unless you're actually using the thing that you declare to be great, you are completely out of integrity in this process. You're fundamentally
eating your own dog food.
Yeah, getting it, well, I wish I went the dog food myself, but at least using your own tools, at least, like if the problem for the commercial barter industry, particularly for the last 30, 40 years, is their insistence that the money their systems generate as a real currency of exchange amongst their trading partners, the business collectives that are interacting through commercial barter industry, that's real money. It works between them. The trouble is the administrators very typically say that money is wonderful, but it's not good enough for us to pay cash, please. So the maintainers of the organization have set up a walled garden with an internal toll booth type, turn it into cash casino frame. You play our game, you pay us cash for it. Now, that is such a contradiction.
And along with that, let me point out, is huge inefficiencies, because they have to provide all kinds of services and promotions and things like that are necessary to justify the fees.
Yeah, there's a lot of cross costing in there, and the fact that as soon as you have something like a percentage levy, the interests of the levy taker is different from that of the levy payer. So you are at contradiction with your community. You're in a task that's never going to work out, and besides, you've contradicted yourself from the beginning. Well, when we're starting open money, we want people to be using open money evidently. I don't mean like that flamboyantly running that this is not Open Money Pride Week or something. We don't need a float. You don't have to wear a funny hat. But the organization of the development group, at least, must be thoroughly open-moneyed rather than fear-based, control structure, institutional, bounded, territorial, all those things. Unfortunate for some, but perfectly fortunate for others. You take the person in Bend, for instance, in Saskatchewan, never minding Bends elsewhere, but say Saskatchewan Bend wants to start one of these things out of the blue. Now, consider, is he better served by a strategy that says, look after yourself, mate, until you've got to the point where you're self-sustaining so that you can join in with the big boys in a network of some sort of people who are self-sustaining? Or would this guy in Bend, or this group, or this whatever, be better supported by being able to register as part of an open money development collective for Canada and be potentially drawing from some of the change funds established in some of the cities by that stage? Like, we're assuming that things are going. There's a few projects around, maybe 5, maybe 50. Some of them are well organized that they have a working banking interface set up. You know what I mean by that, the collateral management of funds loaned, so that there's a publicly evident management of the loan portfolio that the Open Money Development Group is operating, and from which its contributors and beneficiaries negotiate their cash exchange to make themselves viable and contributory. I mean, that's the game. If we cannot collaborate to spread this wave, then we are competing to control it. And, it's just wrong to use the wrong game in this state.
Yeah,
but as we see, people do.
That's exactly.
People have a tendency.
I mean, that's been the 25-year history of LUT systems and other such currencies in the world. And the tendency is especially when you're the first, or like the first in your country or territory or whatever.
Yeah, it's the Chinese whispers over a long telephone line type problem. Like, people get the message, but not all of it. Or they get the message, but they look back and say, well, listen, if this message is so damn good, how come these guys haven't got it working? Well, there must be something wrong with what they're doing. So let's make sure we don't buy their whole package, because it's going to be riddled with some problem or holes or something. We'll take what we like. We'll do what we like. We'll see it as we like. We'll do it the way that we judge appropriate. This is all reasonable. It's all very reasonable.
So what's the consequence of doing that?
Well, it's basically you're trying to spread peace with guns. It's like blankets for the natives in so many ways. Jeez, let's spread some. You cannot create community and commons by enclosure attitudes. You just can't, because you just get it wrong time and time and time again. And particularly when you defer the sort of decision-making strategy of your process to some structure of committees, bylaws, particularly when you defer the responsibility of people to some hierarchy of control by. The open money development has to recognize itself as more like a beehive, a colony, a bunch of individuals who are busy getting on with what individuals have to do, and can be accountable for what they're doing, can be responsible to the others involved, can recognize their alignment and commonality, but they're not waiting for orders. They're not waiting for my boss done told me, and we're alive to the value of working with each other and expanding that interactivity. So the more, the merrier. If you see, the only reason not to say the more the merrier is we don't got enough. If you think we don't got enough, then you're going to say, well, later we're going to get merry. Right now we're going to be pretty tight. But later we'll get merry. You watch us. You watch how merry we get when we're not uptight.
Okay, so what about, so the more the merrier. So what about all of these Ithaca hours and Toronto dollars and Berks and this, that, and the other all over the place? How do they find their way into the open money world?
Well, they've got to be like, almost anybody can be a namespace, a registry, a collection of names of identity. The real point here is to stop thinking just in terms of we are a currency, we do this, we are a community of a particular type. To cement yourself to the system is a problem. Problem of singularity, problem then of interfaces, problem of membership, non-membership, all sorts of shit. What we need instead are communities of identity, which can be as simple as geographic or can be a group that we belong to, but it's like we know each other to be. It's a sort of community of identity, the namespace. Now, the world is full of such namespaces, right down to, member of the club or the Chamber of Commerce. It's a database of names. Now, in principle, a database of names in the Comox Valley can open a subdomain under CVCA. They could be coc.cvca, Chamber of Commerce. Comox Valley of Canada. all they got to do is do that and put a hook into the open money system and identify their membership as account holders. It's like they vouch for their membership to be account holders under CBCA. That's all a namespace has to do. Now that's easy. And all sorts of people can do that. It doesn't cost a damn thing. And you can propagate registries very effectively if you can accommodate name groups, if you can bring in a name group. So you take somebody like a community currency, be a perfect example. There's a bunch of names in there. There's people been working together for years, maybe not that long, maybe very recently, maybe for years though. So they got their style, their tradition. It might be we pass paper. It might be we are a Let's type system, a talent system. It might be a time bank. It might be a barter club. Conventional cash one, but they're a name group. Now, if they want to say, we are this name group, we take out our name in the open money space as this, and our membership will have names under that domain. They're in. If their domain access allows open money, if the names are not sold as properties, but are recognized as agreements between the members of that community. Right? It's a holarchy system. The members are the group. The group is the members. And the group can choose to ban members that it finds inimical to itself. The group runs its own blacklist. Don't ask me how. It's not my department to tell you how to run your own blacklist in your group. But you should know who's in your world, in your name group. And if you do, you're fine, cool. If you're not fine, deal with it. Otherwise, how can you be autonomous group inside the group of groups, etc.? So the holarchy depends upon being able to form a group out of your members. And if you can't do that, don't even get in the game. That's why the open money development is about form a group amongst your members. And who are your members? Whoever shows up and produces. Who's ever a contributor. And what's the terms of trade between you? Negotiable. You work it out. It's not our department to tell you how to work it out. It is our department to tell you what your terms of reference have to be part of that game. So any group, whether they're dedicated to open money development or whether they're not dedicated to open development or whether they're, a service club, the Lions of Victoria or something, they can become a namespace in the system. And by that, the system can expand, and by that expansion, more people can be participating in the expansion. What's difficult to understand about this? So please, understand we only want people in the system who understand what the system is. That's really the invitation to the conversation.
Expansion of what? What is it? So they got a name. So they've got a namespace. What do they do with it?
Oh, well, if you've got a namespace and you want to attach your community, just basically takes one of the widgets or puts up a link to the community currency sites. You open up, you are running the domain through the community currency site. If you're running lions.cv.ca, then you've got the Lions domain and people can open accounts there. With their name.lions.ca, CBCA. So you're in control of having your members on this software net.
So you're essentially a community currency service provider?
Yeah, a registry of names, a community of identity. And anybody who's willing to bring their club into the net or whatever can do that. But the net they're in is a CC net, community currencies as per Let System Protocol and whatever. Now there's a huge number of possible additions that will come in. Right now it's all mutual credit. It's all simple stuff. But
actually, before we get into the complicated stuff, you mentioned, just say a word about the Let System Trust, because you've got mutual credit, you've got community currencies, you've got open money, you've got community way, you've got Let systems. Okay, so just touch on the Let System Trust so that put it in context.
Well, early in the use of the LET system, we realized that a lot of people thought that something like LET system was a LET system, and we had to be clear that there are times when you have moved too many pieces for it to be accurately a LET system anymore. It's something like it. It could be called a LET system with square wheels, or a LET system with no wheels, or something. It could be whatever you choose to build it as. But it ain't a LET system unless it's got the particular criteria, the 5 characteristics under the 3 general areas: community, personal, practical. Now, it became necessary to trademark that, or we figured it was a good idea to trademark that, so that at least the name under trademark and prior use could not be suborned into other utilities in other places. And in the late 60s, our interest in having this information protected in the public domain made insurably available that a LET system was as defined and had terminology.
That's late 80s, not 60s.
No, it was, well, we were making the definition in the 80s. We were publishing the definition in the early 90s, but it was only in the late 90s that we took the step of creating a legal document that could be used by anybody to claim the use of the term LET system in its proper terms, anywhere potentially within the world, but at this point usually within UK legal jurisdiction, probably referenced into Canada, possibly into the States, but the States is such a confused legal domain that you never know what you can do there or not. But anyway, LET systems were...
It proved to be quite useful.
Well, I think its use is mainly to be appreciated in the future, because it's had little to do so far, but at least being able to say that a LET system operates in these ways, and that a LET system is the, if you like, the default setup. It's not the only setup, but it is the default setup of the namespaces in the community, in the CC namespace. And a LET system includes within it this protocol that says businesses can participate in LET systems, which are public, Main Street, legal tender, nobody in charge type networks. Businesses can participate in this, but they're expected to demonstrate their commitment to the community of participation by starting with a small donation in that currency to a charity or group of their choice, or a project associated with that currency, and to make a similar contribution in that currency again to the regional development group, about 10% of that scale. Maybe $200 and $20. That's the sort of scale we recommend as a good guideline. You can be more generous if you like, or perhaps less if you feel good reason to be less so. But basically, a model like that is what a LET system runs on, because it fuels a development model that should employ enough people to get the job done, and more rather than less. It's intended to expand.
It's the creation of a business-backed currency.
It's a business commons that will only work once, because it's the only damn thing where you can do this. I'll leave other people to try and create something similar. I've not seen any significant possibility. I think this is about the only time when you can sort of announce a gold rush, a virtual gold rush. Come, get your money here. Get your employment here to get the money here to get, it's a very involuted, recursive model. If you see the light in this particular idea, if you see the point of it, and therefore can represent it effectively, then you should be up and flying with it fairly quickly and fairly soon. And let's go. So, LET systems have got this encoding in the LET System Trust. to which anybody can be a contributor and a beneficiary without cost. They just say, yep, I believe in the Let System Trust. And that's sort of fundamentally the grounds on which you can create a currency and say it's a Let System. It doesn't have to be published as a Let System, but if anybody asks you, say, yes, it is a Let System, and it fulfills Let System protocol. Well, they're clear, they're defined, and they allow us to propagate a network of something which is clear and defined. And it not only clearly defined in terms of the protocols of behavior in a Let System, as what are users obliged to and not obliged to do, and so on and so forth, but it also includes this development funding mechanism, which, if propagated across networks of namespaces, will support general development of community currencies. If, however, a namespace thinks it is just a currency and is not just a currency but also a currency unto itself and wishes to be a secluded, milker of the golden goose before it's laid the eggs, then it's not part of the network. The network is either a network or it ain't. And if people don't want to play network, then they are not playing network. They're playing not work. And good luck. See you later. Maybe.
Well, in fact, they'll work on their own. In fact, they do. There are many different kinds of currency initiatives around the world that that are looking at running their own networks and clearinghouses, which is, and you might touch on the distinction between, the currencies. I mean, there was this discussion that came up on one of our chat lines about the fact that somebody opined that there's no difference between the Ithaca and Berkshire and Toronto dollar, etc., and Let Systems.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, isn't it? But I mean, it really points to the problem, is that if you don't see what you're looking at, then you do not see what you're looking at. Anybody who thinks that there's no difference between a Berkshire and a mutual credit is deceived, self-deceived, self-deluded at least, or they're not seeing the core distinctions. Money is either created, as people, businesses say that it is, or that money's no good, it's no use. You can only have a money of the businesses and the community if you back it with money of the government or some other form of substantive resource. Money's got to be something, meaning something else, rather than money is what we say it is.
Right.
And
it's
you
gold
see,
standard.
It's back to thingness. It's back to, it's the fact that the person who argues that way isn't noticing there's a difference between the two. It's like you have a horse pulling a cart, and then you try the horse being pulled by the cart, and there is a difference. Now, if somebody swore there was no difference between those two things and that we should all collaborate to mutually organize the most effective, etc., or whatever, you'd have to say, you are missing the point, buddy. There's a lot you have not clearly seen yet. Dear me. Anyway, the mainstream of community currencies, as it would be propagated in the general world, really goes down to the model of backed currencies, the Berkshires, the Toronto dollars, the Salt Spring dollars, where it's
and
money with money in the bank.
Along with that goes what we started with, okay, and we were and the difference, the core difference between open money and closed money. Singular, closed.
As soon as you're doing a closed currency like that, you don't want anybody else around or in the area or any competing ideas. you're actually running around. It's like you're on the ground with an airplane up in the air on a stick, and you're running around holding up this mock airplane saying, look, it flies, don't look at me, look at the airplane, it's flying. No, I'm not holding it up, it's flying. The airplane flies, look, no, I'm not down here holding it up. This is a transparent falsity. It's so clearly nonsense that, one wonders at the people who find it of benefit. Benefit to what? To whom? If you're successful in propagating this,
primarily, I would say.
Well, I'm sure they're all intending well. I'm sure nobody is out there to con anybody on behalf of the Berkshires. For God's sake, if you were in a con job, you'd be doing a much better one than that. So, and nobody's actually making a living at this. They're just costing grants. Sure, there's a few people who got sort of little do it and push it and waddle it posts in some sense, but it's not like the Berkshires are turning a profit, or that they do will because there's a percentage levy either on it or there's just wastage, and those are both, it's just sort of arbitrary irrelevancies. Now, it's a sad misconception, and I think it's a profound misconception that the belief that conning yourself is okay if you're conning others is the purpose, or something like that. Or why do we believe that believing error-structured stupidity is good for people? What's the point in that? I don't get it. Oh.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's back to stewarding open money systems, and the Let System Trust is a core document.
It's more of it's a mark in the books that basically I think empowers every argument you would need to make about the mutuality, the connectivity of let systems and the network of let systems, because it defines not only what they are, how they independently are and can be, and the ranges of varieties they can be put to. Let system can be put to all sorts of varieties of shapes and forms with totally compatible social agreements added on top. You just can't take anything away, or at least you do so at considerable peril. They also provide this medium through which the collaboration of people in creating this new medium. How do community currencies come into being? Network, cross-regional, cross-local. How do they become cause-related? All that sort of activity can be correlated and interacted and related if the developers are part of a network. And the propagation of the namespace of identity as the peg space on which you float the namespaces of currencies, the connectivities of currencies, that's the shift. And unless you recognize the spaces of names and the spaces of currencies, and recognize that the open money development groups operate in the space of currencies, that their currencies are not related to any particular name group, that the vitality of the idea lies in the network, not in the not work, then you're out until you're in. So join in when you're woken up. In the meantime, keep taking the pills.
Well, that was pretty good. That covered a lot of ground, I'd say. What have we touched on?
Oh, I think we've got to start touching more on the fronters, backers, and middlers sort of deal.
Okay, so we're talking about, in terms of fronters and backers, we're talking about people who see what we see, or the possibility of what we see. That there's, or what I was talking about the other day is monetizing the spare capacity of a community. What's the multiplier effect of a money that continues to circulate versus a money that flows through like shit through a goose?
Yeah, well, that's
so there are people who would recognize that.
one would hope that the primary distinction between open money and closed money, the round versus through business, the circulate versus flat, the collaborate versus compete, one would hope that distinction would be totally reflected throughout the entire application of the process. Yeah, but I'm not sure if that was your point. I'm sorry, I distracted myself a little.
Well, no, it's okay. I was talking about fronters and backers. I'm talking about for somebody to put, hard cash up on the basis that they think that this is a good idea, that it's possibly a great idea, the next big thing, et cetera.
It's all a matter of money and time, basically. There are some people who have the time to do some of this, but they could use some money, bread on the table, rent paid for the levels. They could use some flow to make it possible to put their time into this. There are other people who have access to money. I'm not saying that they just reach in the back pocket and put it off, but they have the ability to, add a few more thousand to their mortgage or their company accounts or something. Christ knows where, under what circumstances, their credit cards, who knows, but they have capacity to bring money with risk. So people are either here with the money or here with the time, or what are they? Well, if you're not here with money to make it possible for people with time to do something, or you're not here with time to do something if there are people with money able to make it possible for you, then what are you here for? Now, there's several possibilities. One of them is that you're interested in helping, in which case you should look into being a changer. And you may be very helpful, in which case you could look into being a fronter, that is, change some money as it appears, undertake to provide some cash to the development groups to make their worlds work before perhaps there's any substantive reality to the trading world. But those are the roles.
Local governments can do that.
Well, yes, all sorts of people are potential changers. Absolutely, banks, governments.
Well, fronters. I'm thinking fronters.
Yeah.
I'm the mayor of whatever Bend, and I think this is a damn good idea, and there's a bunch of young people want to go out there and do it, and I say, okay, sure. Well, the town will buy some of that.
They'll front
Here it is.
Change
Here's
it.
some up. Yeah. Here's some up front.
Yeah, they could up front on it. That's right. And the more fronters there are, the lighter it is on the backers. Fronters are great. They really move this stuff, and moving is what this is about. It's not about stacking it or holding it or praying for it or survival. So the backers are sort of, they're in a way like the floats in the seaplane. They're the bits that keep you in the water until you're in the air. All right? So, we need the backers. But the more fronters we've got, which are sort of like the lift in the wings and the thing that takes you forward in your financial balances, then the less backers. And pretty soon you can...
Local, for instance, could do that.
Yeah. All sorts of backing can be done very easily, particularly if they're fronters. So one of the components of putting together your open money development group is getting clear about who's in it for the time, who's doing something, who's willing to do something, how much do they need to do the things they're willing to do. How does that all match up as a group? So what's your time commitments? What are the requirements for that time commitments? Oh, well, that means we need 5,000 this month, we need 7,000 the month after. That's a guess, but that's about it. Right, okay, let's go. Then it's, where do we have 5,000 this month and 7 next? And that's where you need your backers and your fronters. Now, frankly, if you're not a doer, and you're not a backer or a fronter, then you're best a changer and you're waiting to change. That's good. People who are waiting to change are very welcome to wait and change. We're happy for waiters and changers. They also starve who only stand and wait.
Well, there's also the resource people. I mean, there are people who have stuff.
They're time people in a sense. Yeah, hardware, space, communications,
telephones, whatever.
Yeah. Bring and share. It's showing.
It's a barn, it's like a barn raising, right? I mean, you just bring what you've got.
Collectively raising a net. Just collectively raising a net. We're raising this bit, you raise that bit. Look, we're all connecting. So as we raise our net, we find we're connected as a net. So you've got to raise your net. Got to bring up the net. The money net. It's the CC net, my friends, and it's coming soon to a theater near you. Well, I think that does me for the day.
Okay.
Unless you have some particular points, Ernie.
No. I think that's pretty well exhausted that topic. Well, I don't know about exhausted, but we should maybe pass this around and see if the Portland people want to check it out and maybe come on and with some questions.
Well, that's a good point, isn't it? That's a good point. Maybe, but I think we should channel that through the various discussants in the Portland area who have been in communication with us recently. So let's do that.
Like Alan's been on this show, and you might want to do that. Anyway, so we can pass this around.
Okay. Right.
Okay, so that's about it, eh?
Do for me. Thanks, man.
All right. Okay. Bye, Michael.
Bye now.
Okay, so that's it. I'm Ernie Jacob. This has been Open Money on Blog Talk Radio, and all of the stuff that we've been talking about can be found on the net and through openmoney.org. There's also lets.net, and you can also Google all of these things. So have fun. And maybe we'll hear from some of you at some later time and continue this discussion that way. And now I have to find out where I can turn this thing off. I keep forgetting this part.